I am confident that you are suddenly becoming aware that everything around us seems to be changing, as if everywhere we turn our eyes to look, everything is as if it all is becoming unhinged on every side. Surprisingly, many of us cannot even seem to define what reality is anymore, as things are not the same as they seemed to be yesterday. Let me attempt to set a foundation upon which we might discuss and analyze our current situation. The European Union, or simply referred to as the EU, is a political and economic union of 27 member states that exists based upon the EU's founding treaties and thereby subject to the privileges and obligations of membership. These 27 have agreed by the treaties to share their own sovereignty through the institutions of the European Union in certain aspects of government. The 27 member states are Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, and Sweden. The United Kingdom ceased to be an EU member state on 31st January 2020 by means of a political process known as Brexit. Since 1922, the United Kingdom has been made up of 4 countries, England, Scotland, Wales, which collectively make up Great Britain, and Northern Ireland. Then, of course, there is the NATO alliance, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO is a military and political alliance of 31 countries from Europe and North America. The NATO members are Albania, Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Montenegro, Netherlands, North Macedonia, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Turkey, United Kingdom, and the United States. There are, of course, some efforts designed to counter the Western world, attempting to curb their power over the rest of the world. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization, known as the SCO, which is a political, economic, and security alliance that includes China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. The SCO aims to promote cooperation on regional issues such as counterterrorism, trade, energy, and infrastructure. The SCO also serves as a platform for China and Russia to balance the U.S. presence and interests in Central Asia and beyond. There is also a comprehensive strategic partnership between China and Iran, which is a 25-year agreement that covers various areas of cooperation, such as trade, investment, energy, infrastructure, defense, security, culture, and education. The partnership is expected to boost Iran's economy and help it circumvent U.S. sanctions. The partnership also reflects China's strategic interests in expanding its Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, and securing its energy supplies from the Middle East. Then there is the Eurasian Economic Union, known as the EAEU, is an economic integration bloc that includes Russia, Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. The EAEU aims to create a single market with free movement of goods, services, capital, and labor. The EAEU also seeks to coordinate policies on trade, customs, energy, transport, and agriculture. The EAEU is seen as a rival to the European Union and a way for Russia to assert its influence in the post-Soviet world. The Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO, which is a military alliance that includes Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. The CSTO aims to provide collective defense and security cooperation among its members. The CSTO also conducts joint military exercises and operations to counter threats such as terrorism, extremism, drug trafficking, and cyber attacks. The CSTO is regarded as a counterweight to NATO and a tool for Russia to maintain its regional dominance. There is also the BRICS group, which is an informal association of 5 emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The BRICS group aims to enhance cooperation on economic development, trade, finance, innovation, health, education, and climate change. The BRICS group also established the New Development Bank, referred to as the NDB, and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, known as the CRA, to provide alternative sources of funding and financial stability for its members and other developing countries. The BRICS group is seen as a challenge to the U.S.-led global order and institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Many who study biblical prophecy seem to be completely unaware of the new potential power and mighty player that is rising in the unsuspecting world. When considering the UK, it is important to keep in mind that this kingdom is easily expanded to include the British Commonwealth of Nations that remain under the symbolic leadership of King Charles III of the United Kingdom. There is an ever-increasing awareness of his possible identification with the biblical Antichrist, which is certainly a matter of great importance to biblical prophecy. Obviously, we are speaking of a potential last days scenario, one that is yet to come, yet happening right in front of our eyes. The royal throne of King Charles rests firmly upon the foundation of its history of biblical importance. Out of the British royal throne and empire emerged the major English-speaking nations, which include the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Anyone familiar at all with Western history remembers how, less than a century ago, the British Empire was the world's preeminent power. It was truthfully said that it was the empire on which the sun never set, which simply meant that this great empire spanned the globe from Europe to Africa to North and South America to Asia and to Australia and beyond to the many islands in between. Still, many might be surprised to learn that for 2 centuries, the British Empire was the dominant global power with a navy that ruled the great seas. The claim is made that the British family has a direct descendancy from Israel and King David, and the biblical promises regarding Judah centering upon the strange incident with the birth of twin sons, Pharez and Zerah. Anyone familiar with the strange birth may recall that Zerah's hand came out first, and a scarlet thread was tied to it to mark the one who was to be the firstborn. Afterwards, his hand was withdrawn back into the womb as the other twin came forth to be born first, gaining the name Pharez, a name meaning breach or a breaking through. This story comes from Genesis 38:27-30. King George VI was the father of Queen Elizabeth II, who is the father of King Charles III, the current monarch of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. According to some sources, the royal genealogical records indicate that the biblical breach we just referred to is restored through Queen Elizabeth II, mother of current King Charles III. It is, however, disputed by others that there is conclusive evidence that Queen Mary, or Queen Elizabeth, was from the biblical Zerah's royal line. That being said, there are indeed other sources that do make the claim that this is indeed true. Such claims indicate that Queen Elizabeth was from the biblical Zerah's royal line. Queen Mary, the wife of King George V and the grandmother of Queen Elizabeth II, is also said to be descended from Charlemagne through a shorter line of descent than her husband. Sources claim that Queen Mary was the 34th descendant of Charlemagne, while King George V was the 37th descendant. The problem is that there is no detailed genealogical evidence to support this claim, and it may be based purely upon speculation and legend rather than facts. The fact does remain, however, that King Charles III is descended from Charlemagne. For those who might not be familiar with the history, Charlemagne was a Frankish king who ruled most of Western and Central Europe in the late 8th and early 9th centuries. He was crowned as the first emperor of the Holy Roman Empire by Pope Leo III in 800 AD. Charlemagne is considered as one of the most influential figures in European history and culture, and is sometimes called the Father of Europe. What does it take for King Charles III to be anointed and declared the king or emperor over the new Holy Roman Empire? All it really takes is for the Pope to make it so. Charles has already had conferred the title and crown as the King of Jerusalem. He already has many sources claiming himself to be the son of David and the legitimate King of Jerusalem and all of Israel. Like Jeroboam of old, he is associated with the lineage of Ephraim. He is yet a second king instead of Rehoboam, who leads the nation into great idolatry and apostasy. Worthwhile, perhaps, to keep a prophetic eye upon? I think so. Apocryphal sources indicate that Mary, the mother of Jesus, was herself not only a descendant of Pharez, but also of his brother Zerah. Yet other sources state that one of the daughters of King Zedekiah had married an Irish prince of the line of Judah through Zerah. In fact, the marriage is said to have taken place during or shortly before the siege of Jerusalem. Thus, Zedekiah's daughter, who was a descendant of Perez, married a man descended through Zerah. It is not possible for us to say with certainty that either Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth was from the biblical Zerah's royal line. Apparently, they have had some connection to the tribe of Judah, but that does not necessarily mean they were direct descendants of Zerah. All critics of such teachings does not eliminate the great mystery surrounding the British royal throne.
Save the king! Save the king! Save the king!
The British Commonwealth, or the Commonwealth of Nations, is a voluntary association of 56 sovereign states that share a common history, culture, and values. Most of them were former British colonies or dependencies, but some joined the Commonwealth without having any direct ties to the United Kingdom. Charles III became the monarch of the UK and 14 other Commonwealth realms after the death of Queen Elizabeth II on September 8, 2022. The head of the Commonwealth is King Charles III, who succeeded Queen Elizabeth II after her death on September 8, 2022. However, he does not have any political or executive power over the Commonwealth members. The Commonwealth has a long and rich history that dates back to the 1920s, when the British Empire began to transform into a more equal partnership of independent nations. The Commonwealth realms are former British colonies that have retained the British monarch as their symbolic head of state. The members of the Commonwealth are Antigua and Barbuda, Australia, the Bahamas, Belize, Canada, Grenada, Jamaica, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Solomon Islands, and Tuvalu. Some of these countries have expressed their intention to become republics and remove King Charles as their head of state in the near future. Here is a map of the current members of the Commonwealth, with the 15 Commonwealth realms in dark blue, the other 41 members in light blue, and the former members in orange. The Commonwealth realms are those countries that recognize King Charles III as their head of state, while the other members are either republics or have their own monarchs. The environment is becoming of critical importance, and such importance is increasing daily around the globe. Although King Charles III is not the primary global leader regarding climate issues, he is one of the most influential and vocal advocates for environmental action. King Charles has been raising awareness and promoting solutions for climate change and other environmental challenges for decades, both as the Prince of Wales and as the King of the United Kingdom. He has also launched and supported various initiatives and organizations that aim to engage businesses, governments, civil society, and individuals in sustainability efforts. As the monarch of the United Kingdom, King Charles is supposed to be subject to different rules than when he was the heir to the throne. It is said that he is now obliged to remain politically neutral and respect the constitutional role of the Prime Minister and the Parliament.
Now, I mentioned the beast with feet like a bear, body like a leopard, mouth like a lion being on Prince Charles' coat of arms. And the red dragon, by the way, is also on his coat of arms. It's actually on it. The red dragon of Wales, the red dragon that the Roman used. And that's completely unique to him, by the way, in history and in heraldry. No one's ever had that before. No, they've had lions or lion leopards on their heraldic achievements, but not where it went further to have claws like those of a bear. In 1953, the nation of Wales adopted the red dragon as its national symbol. It was a major symbol in Wales the whole time, going back to the Romans that occupied ancient Wales, what is Wales today, and then ancient Britannia. And from there to the Romans that occupied ancient Judea. His mother, when she was coronated queen, was coronated queen of thy people Israel, quote unquote. Her lineage atop it, her official lineage published in London, which is very detailed, and it's offered through Prophecy House. I'm not just saying this. The chart is available with the book for those who want to get it. Her lineage shows Queen of thy people Israel, the royal house of King David. They explicitly claim to sit upon the throne of David. The British monarchy does. And that's been taken seriously enough in Israel for it to be announced on national television that Prince Charles is a descendant of King David. That could not happen unless there were rabbis in Israel behind the scenes saying, okay, who can we look at who's got a lineage we think we can verify who might be a descendant of King David, since our temple genealogies, the genealogical records were destroyed with the Second Temple. What are we going to be able to come up with now? And that is what they came up with.
And okay, what's amazing to me is that you said they announced that twice in Israel?
At least twice, yeah. Before 1998.
Okay, and they've never done that with anyone else, correct?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't heard of that being done with anybody else ever, not even his sons.
Okay, so repeat again. They announced that he was
a descendant of King David.
Okay.
Why would they do that? And then on top of that, from his lineage,
which actually would then make Israel trust him more to be their Messiah.
You would think so. But then the monarchy did something very strange. They never made an official visit to Israel, ever, until 2018. And then they sent William instead of Prince Charles. All the visits that they made were unofficial until that. He claims to be a descendant also of Muhammad through the Hashemite lineage, which is the line of descent ostensibly from Muhammad, like Jordan's King Hussein, like Iraq's Saddam Hussein before he was killed. Yeah, Prince Charles is of that same lineage. And behind the scenes, he converted to Islam under a guardian of Islam, one of the most powerful Muslims in the world. He received an honorary doctorate in Islamic studies from the university there in Cairo, Egypt, the most powerful seat of Islamic learning in the whole world. So Prince Charles is the most popular Westerner from anywhere in the world to the Muslims of the Middle East, and has been this whole time. He has no peer among Westerners so far as the Muslims of the world are concerned. Then he's now, as King of England, head of the Anglican Protestant Church. Can you imagine the lack of spiritual discernment for the Anglican Protestant Church to put the Antichrist as their head? And that is what they have just done. Prince Charles descends from virtually every royal house in the history of the world, post-flood. He also descends from the ancient Roman emperors, the ancient Assyrian kings, the ancient Babylonian kings, the ancient Egyptian pharaohs. There is no lineage of any significance that any Christian would ever point to from which he does not descend. And by the way, there was a Crusader title called King of Jerusalem. The Crusaders, when they captured Jerusalem from the Muslims, the Crusader who was in charge of Jerusalem was titled King of Jerusalem. That's the Habsburg lineage today, the Habsburg dynasty. Prince Charles descends from that. And guess who the title belongs to today, if not the Habsburgs? If they were to give it to anybody else, it's actually to Prince Charles. He is King of Jerusalem per that title, that Crusader title. He's behind everything happening in the world today. And you probably have never heard that. When we hear about the Great Reset, the first thing people see typically is Klaus Schwab's book, which is the Great Reset. And what the Great Reset, folks, is the actualization, the implementation on the ground of the New World Order. In other words, the New World Order was the plan, and now they're implementing it. And that's what the Great Reset actually is. They're now actively fomenting it and bringing it to pass in a very plotted, planned, conspiratorial way. Now, Prince Charles was the person, not Klaus Schwab, who announced the Great Reset to the world from the World Economic Forum. Months before Klaus Schwab's book came out, months before Klaus Schwab mentioned the Great Reset, months before anybody else ever said anything about it, it was Prince Charles talking about the Great Reset and, quote unquote, Build Back Better.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was Prince Charles who personally kicked in motion and announced to the world the Great Reset. Klaus Schwab reports to Prince Charles. So when we talk about global activities, this is one every Christian who pays any attention to prophecy knows. The Antichrist, prince of Roman lineage, they've probably heard the Roman lineage part, but if they haven't, they know the Antichrist, probably a prince, will be involved in a covenant, a treaty with Israel for 7 years. So they go to Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. That is the prophecy that speaks about this treaty or this covenant. So what does it actually say? It says that this prince of Roman lineage will confirm or affirm, that's the way it's typically translated in English, and I'll come back to what the correct translation actually is, a treaty or a covenant La Rabim. The Hebrew is La Rabim, with many, for 1 7. And that 7 in context is the 7 years of the tribulation week. So that part, people have gotten right. Those who talk about it, they understand that this thing is going to be confirmed or affirmed for a period of 7 years. But there's nothing there about it being signed. There's nothing there about Israel being involved with it. It says it's with many, La Rabim. The word Israel isn't there. There's nothing in that verse or prophecy about Israel at all. The word confirm or affirm is the Hebrew word gabor, which means make strong or strengthen. By inference, what it really means is to impose or enforce. So this thing is not just affirmed or confirmed, it's externally imposed. It is enforced by this prince of Roman lineage. We just know that it's a treaty that's imposed or enforced with many under this prince of Roman lineage. So the Mideast peace process has been under Prince Charles this entire time. Few people know that. Why don't they know that? You know, you've got all these Christians out there, again, prophecy teachers, people looking at scripture. They know there's the Mideast peace process. Okay, why don't they know that it's Prince Charles who's over it? Bill Gates, you know, everybody looks at the COVID-19 stuff. Bill Gates is a knight of the British monarchy. Yeah, there are a lot of instances like that that people don't realize, where the people who are running the show, they're looking at these people saying, they seem to be, you know, really evil. Like in the case of Bill Gates, maybe he's the Antichrist. People have speculated, well, he's just a knight, you know, under Prince Charles, in this case now King Charles III. The quartet from its inception was under Tony Blair. And for the majority of its existence, it was still under Tony Blair, though for a number of years now it's been under somebody else. But Tony Blair took that over right after he was Prime Minister of the UK. And that's when it came to fruition. And he reported, of course, to Prince Charles. Mm. And the people who have been in charge of the quartet since Tony Blair report to Prince Charles. They're his subjects. So the whole time, he's been over it. Well, what is the quartet? The quartet is the United States, the European Union, Russia, and the United Nations. And because the United Nations is in the quartet, it's all the nations of the world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, under Prince Charles.
Now,
pushing this agenda to divide the promised land and make Israel's borders even more indefensible than they already are. And by the way, that statue is to Prince Charles, and it already exists.
Yeah,
it came out
I
after
wanted
the
you to
first
talk
edition of
about that statue because it's very interesting.
In the early 2000s, years after the first edition of the Antichrist and the Cup of Tea was published, Prince Charles was hailed savior of the world, environmental savior of the world. So I mentioned earlier that all these agendas, for example, to collapse our oil and gas, and I'll mention coal also, industries globally, are under Prince Charles. That agenda to do that for the West is under Prince Charles. So everybody thinks of Al Gore. Well, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people think of Al Gore when we talk about the environmental movement, right? The reality is that it's not Al Gore. You know, it's the British monarchy that is responsible for the modern environmental movement, almost in its totality. Starting with the British Fauna and Flora Protection Society of the 1800s, which in turn led to the World Resources Institute, and not in this particular order, but the World Resources Institute, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the World Wildlife Fund, which has branches in multiple nations now, starting in the UK. All of that was under the British monarchy and then under Prince Philip. And then from 1969 on, Prince Charles got heavily involved with it and basically took it over.
King Charles should not be considered as the primary global leader regarding climate issues, as he does not, at least he does not yet, have any formal authority or power to influence to implement any climate actions at this time. However, none can predict his future role in such areas, especially when considering his history and certainly his exceedingly strong influence. Hopefully such information changes your thoughts, at least somewhat, as to the powerful role and influence that King Charles will have as we enter closer into a more global government.
Revelation 17:11, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and their strength unto the beast. In other words, all these horns Whether it represents 10 nations or 10 in complete a divine order or a completion of all nations. I mean, it could represent the United Nations. All nations, rather than just 10. But if that's true, it says all these nations are going to receive power as kings 1 hour of the beast, and they will have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. In other words, the whole world is going to be at the Antichrist's disposal. These shall make war with the Lamb. The Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called chosen and faithful. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So that's what happens to her at the end. So that all the kings of the earth will turn on her. For God hath put it into their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, not a nation, a great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. If you want to see how she reigns, just think, if you go look through all of history, you'll find out that it was always the Roman Church ruling over all of Europe. They were over the kings. If a king wouldn't acknowledge Rome, they would deny. They would say, "Oh, we're going to damn you to hell." And so most kings went along with it. Now there were some that didn't, especially during the Reformation. And the Catholic Church began to lose a lot of power after the Reformation. Then you have this very interesting prophecy in Psalm 83 where it talks about 10 horns or 10 kingdoms. Psalm 83 mentions 10 kingdoms. You can see it in the Psalm. Edom, the Ishmaelites, the Moab, the Hagarites, the Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, Philistia, Tyre, and Ashur. And here's the modern day territories. Edom was Jordan, southeast Israel. Ishmaelites were consisted of the Arabs, Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Kuwait, and Sudan. Moab was Jordan. The Hagarites was Jordan. Gebal was Jordan. Ammon was Jordan. Amalek was Jordan, Iraq, and Kuwait. Philistia was Gaza. Tyre was Lebanon, and Ashur was Syria, Iraq, southeast Turkey. You see a beast with 10 horns. What does all that mean? If you plot them out, here's the 10 horns from Psalm 83. Remember, the beast has 10 horns, right? Well, here's the 10 horns. What's right above it? Europe, right? Europe is the beast, and you can see the 10 horns underneath. When Nebuchadnezzar saw this image, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, he saw from the head, which represented Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, all the way down to the feet was the nations that would come until the end. When you got to the feet and the toes, the Messiah was going to come at the end. So this image he saw represented all of the primary kingdoms of prophecy. What's interesting here is that those kingdoms are on the right-hand side here. We see that there was Babylon, the Medo-Persian, Greece, and Rome. Rome was the nation that was in control in the days of Jesus. And according to the original prophecy here, Rome will still be in control at the second coming of Christ. They call it the revived Roman Empire. It's gone through many different shades of changing and transformation, but it's still there. In fact, you know how much it's there, because every time you turn around, who's in the news? The Pope is in the news, right? The Pope is a player of Rome. And the empire, the Roman Empire was Rome. And we see the significance. Well, there's going to be an empire return in that same land, which is why we started with the Mediterranean Sea and all the land around it, because that's where the Roman Empire was. Well, this fourth beast that Daniel spoke of, I know we've covered it a few times. We're going to look at it just to read the scripture. We're going to say a couple things that we've brought up before, but we're going to see some new insight looking at this as well. Because how many of you are concerned about what's happening in our day? We could go back, we could say, what happened in the time of Jesus and what happened in the time of Charlemagne and so on and so forth. But really, mostly when people are interested in prophecy, mostly what they're interested in is what's going to happen now, right? So let's read this in Daniel chapter 7, verse 8. It's an awful terrifying looking beast actually, but I wouldn't want to come across it. But you can see he's got 10 horns, and there's an 11th horn that's coming out of his head there with a face on it. But I'm jumping ahead. So let's read the scripture. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn. In fact, that little horn seems like it's grown almost as big as the other ones. Before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. Now remember, when we covered this before, we said originally when this little horn comes up of this beast that represented the Roman Empire, Rome had been divided into 10 nations, 10 horns, if you will, 10 kingdoms, and 3 of them had to be completely rooted up to allow for the revived Holy Roman Empire to rise up. Okay? And which, when I say Holy Roman Empire, who rises up with him is the papacy. Okay, they go together. And so 3 of the first horns would be plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were the eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. Now remember, this beast, the reason we go back to this beast all that, because this beast stays from the time it rises up, it stays here until Jesus comes. Only it goes through transformations. In fact, here's where we talk about Jesus coming, Messiah. I beheld till the thrones were cast down. This is Daniel 7, 9 through 10. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands of thousands ministered unto him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were open. And so you can see that's God there. The judgment's being set. Well, we know the judgment doesn't happen until the end, right? In fact, in the book of Revelation, we see it like this. And then there was a great white throne, and everyone who died was even raised up. Everyone has to go before the great white throne in judgment, including the devil, including the fallen angels, including the demons. And I beheld, Daniel 7, 11 through 12, I beheld them because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. I beheld even till the beast was slain and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. We see that in Revelation. Remember, at the time when Jesus comes back, he's going to take the beast and the false prophet and cast them in to the lake of fire. And then he's going to take Satan, throw him in to the prison, the bottomless pit, for 1,000 years. He's going to let him out, and then when he comes back again, he's going to take him and throw him in the lake of fire. So that's all we're reading here, that the beast was slain, his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. Remember, the beast represents that final kingdom. As concerning the rest of the beasts, what rest of the beasts? We saw the lion, the bear, the leopard, right? We just got through seeing that. As concerning the rest of those beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. This is interesting because it's talking about throwing this last final beast into the fire, and there alongside him is still the lion and the bear and the leopard. In other words, they're all still there. Even though it represented a succession of empires, they're all still there even in our time. Daniel 7, 19 through 20, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and the nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with his feet. Sounds pretty rough, doesn't he? It's pretty tough, pretty rough. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before them 3 fell. We already saw that in the other verse. Even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake, spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And you can see that horn there with the face on it, the mouth. And Daniel 7:21 through 22, I beheld in the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. And sometimes we wonder, how come things happen to good people? Good people. When I say good people, I'm talking about not only good people, but good Christian people. Why do bad things sometimes happen? And we're going to be asking, it seems like we're going to be asking our question more and more and more. Why do things happen? And it says right here that the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. There's certain things in God's plan and that He allows. And He allows, at the end, He's going to allow this horn, who, when we speak of the horn, we're generally talking about the end, the final Antichrist kingdom, right? The Antichrist kingdom is more than one person, by the way. And this is where a lot of confusion has come, because we're always trying to make one Antichrist. Did you know the one who wrote the book of Revelation, John the Apostle, who we always taught when we go to the book of Revelation, how many times have you heard me, as we're going through the book of Revelation, say the Antichrist, the Antichrist, the Antichrist, the Antichrist? But you know what? The Apostle John never mentioned the Antichrist throughout the whole book of Revelation. He never said the Antichrist. Now, he did in the other writings, and what he said was, you've heard that Antichrist has come, and he talks about there being many Antichrists. There's not just one. But he painted the whole picture, and I think the reason he didn't say the Antichrist is because he didn't want you to have myopia, looking at things through like a narrow field. He wanted you to be able to see the whole broad picture like we've been trying to cover here. But anyway, the horn always, the little horn that comes up, always represents the Antichrist kingdom in one form or another. And here it represents from the Roman side. So anyway, I beheld that same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them for how long? All the way till the end. Look, until the Ancient of Days came. That means until, and we're not talking about Jesus' first coming, we're talking about His second coming. In other words, this will continue. The saints will be, the horn will prevail, the Antichrist kingdom and spirit will prevail against the saints until the Ancient of Days came. Judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. And I'm looking forward to that, because that is ultimate victory. Daniel 7:23-24, we read, thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, shall devour the whole earth, shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Well, it has 2,000 years it's doing this. And that's exactly, if you look at history, that's exactly what it's done. The 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first. He shall subdue 3 kings. Now, when it was all the way back in the time of the Roman Empire, when it first rose up to allow, this is after the time of Christ, we've all heard of the fall of the Roman Empire. It happened in 476 AD. There were 3 horns that were rooted up to allow for the Holy Roman Empire to rise up. In other words, a revived Roman Empire, only this time it had that nature about it, that it had this holiness about it. Anyway, the 3 were the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. I know that doesn't mean anything to you because they're not around anymore. And so unless you study history, you have no idea what they were. But here you can see them on the map. I've got the ones that fell here. You have the Vandals, the Heruli, the Ostrogoths here. They're circled, and there's a, what do you call that? It's not a square, but this is not perpendicular, but I forget what you call that. But anyway, yeah, go back to your geometry days or whatever. So you can see those 3. Those are the ones that are uprooted. In fact, if you can make out, this is a horn, and you can see the roots. And that's a horn over there. You can see the roots, and there's a horn over there. These are the ones that were pulled out of here to make room for the That's what it looks like little scribble, but if you examine them real close, they're actually the horns that were ripped out, and it shows where they're coming from. Anyway, what we get from this, we can answer this question: what facts does the Bible say will distinguish the Antichrist kingdom? Well, during the fall of the Roman Empire, we had this: the little horn rises among 10 horns, or nations, of which 3 of them are plucked up by the roots, and this horn cannot rise until after 476 AD. Why? Because that's when it did. Because there wasn't 10 horns. Rome didn't divide up into 10 horns and break. The fall of the empire happened right around that time. And so the Holy Roman Empire can't rise while the Roman Empire is still in command, right? So it had to die for it to revive and come back again. It's kind of like when the beast says the beast was and he was not and he is. We can see there's a death and then a resurrection. A death and then a resurrection following. Well, it's the same thing here. For Rome to revive or transform into its, like a chameleon. Now here are the horns, of course, like I said, the Heruli, the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, they're now extinct. They don't tie to anything. But these other ones, the Alemanni became the Germans, the Burgundians became the Swiss, the Franks became the French, the Lombards became the Italians, the Saxons became the English, the Suevi became the Portuguese, and the Visigoths became the Spanish. Okay, so that kind of ties things together. All those countries that we just mentioned are Europe. Yeah. Right? Because the beast is still there. The nations are still there. They're not extinct. They just changed their name. But they're still there. For the horn to come up, it has to pluck up 3 horns by the roots. We saw that. The little horn is a man speaking great things. We've seen that in the scriptures we read. But last week we talked about, and we've talked about it before, this harlot who rides on the 7-headed beast. And we remember that the heads represents kingdoms, right? I think it's more than coincidental. See, she cannot ride... She cannot ride on the beast until the 10 have become 7. After the 3 horns are knocked out, now you see that there's 10. There were 10 kingdoms. Now there's 7, and all of a sudden, who's riding on the beast? The harlot. You see, she snuck in there. When the horn rose, she snuck in there too. And it's like they have this joint kingdom. It's called the Holy Roman Empire. And Daniel 7:26 through 27, and he shall speak great words against the Most High. And he shall wear out the saints of the Most High. We're talking about that horn again, that Antichrist kingdom. He shall think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until times in the dividing of times. Remember we said that coincides with 1260 days and 3.5 years and 42 months that are all talked about in the book of Revelation. And it's also rehearsed in the book of Daniel. It's 3.5 years, 42 months, and 1260 days. That's the time of the final Antichrist rule. However, remember we also talked about in prophecy, sometimes a day can be a year. And so we not only have the 1260 days, we actually had, if you look at it, we had 1260 years why the harlot was strong and in power and ruled over the kings of the earth. You go back to European history and you can see exactly what we're talking about. They had individual kingdoms, but the Pope ruled over them all. Those 3.5 years, they coincide with they tie in with the book of Revelation because, remember, Antichrist will reign on earth in his kingdom for 7 years, but for 3.5 years, he may not even know himself that he's the Antichrist. It's not until he dies and comes back possessed by this, inhabited by this beast that rises out of the bottomless pit, which is, we call him Apollo. He's Apollyon. He's named in the scripture. And we've seen that come up so many times, and you look back through mythology, and the worship of gods, and Apollo was very significant. I believe it's the same personage. But anyway, so he becomes the Antichrist. The scripture clearly says he has 42 months that he will reign. That also coincides with the time. Remember, in Revelation 12, we said that Satan has war in heaven, and he is cast out of heaven with all of his angels with him for 42 months. He has a short time. He has 42 months to rule, and he will rule through the Antichrist. But let's go back to 7:26, Daniel 7:26 and verse 27 here. It says, "But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him." Not quite sure everything that encompasses, but remember, those of us who are destined for heaven, we go up in the rapture, we're going to be in heaven, right? And then there's some Israelites that are going to be in heaven. But beyond that, there's going to be people that are allowed to enter into the millennial kingdom, which is going to be on earth for 1,000 years. So he's talking about that kingdom. And also, after that, what happens? Well, the kingdom continues on. It's just that the New Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, actually comes down upon the earth. And the whole topography of the planet seems to change. And we'll get into that. I want to get into some of that stuff now because we're not there with the millennium. Just to show you that this is talking about the end of the end of the end, all the way, not even past the Antichrist. Even past that, even past the millennium. Because after the millennium, remember, Satan is loose from his prison. He comes back, and all kinds of stuff happens. But you'll see we're actually getting pretty close, because I don't know what we're going to do when we finish here. Pastor will be relieved. So Rome is destroyed. We had the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD. We had the uprooting of those three horns. And then we did have the arrival of the horn come up. It was called the Holy Roman Empire. It happened in 800 AD. It was Charlemagne. He's known by Charles the Great. He was first the king of the Franks, Charles the First. And if you've ever heard of Charles the Great or Charlemagne, he was the one who satisfied this rising up of the revived Roman Empire, which was the Holy Roman Empire. So from 800 AD, he became the first Holy Roman Emperor, the first recognized emperor in Western Europe since the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the pagan Roman Empire. Now we have here a map which represents the European Union. So it's not just Europe, but the European Union. The European Union is kind of like the United States of America. It's got 50 states, right? Well, the European Union has all these countries that are part of it. Now, you can see here the United Kingdom up here, right? United Kingdom used to be a part of it, but just very recently, they got themselves detached. Right? The Brexit, they called it. The exit of the British. They voted democratically. They voted to get out of this. Because the whole rest of this wants the New World Order.
That was just recently.
But they recently... Now, I see that as a really interesting sign. And anyway, it perks my ears up because... all the way through the scripture, seems like Britain is tied to the United States of America. We saw when Israel, remember when the wings were broken off of the lion that represented Britain, we said that those wings were given to Israel, to help Israel, and those wings represented the United States of America. And the thing about it is, something helps, something comes to Israel's assistance in the very last days. And so the question is, of course, does God use the United States of America to help Israel escape from the Antichrist? That's a question we ask. We don't have the answer, probably not until we get there, but it's a valid question. And I see hope. I see hope here that Britain has detached themselves from here, because what that suggests is maybe, just maybe, now most of your politicians, most of your presidents have wanted to be a part of this new world order. It just may be that the United States of America wakes up, just like Britain did, and says, no, we don't want this. The people stand up and say, no, we don't want this. So that's my hope, is that that'll happen. I don't know if it'll happen or not, but I do remember that many of you probably heard of George Washington. Obviously you heard of George Washington. But he had a dream, a dream or a vision, if you will, that spoke about the end times. And it wasn't biblical, but it was a terrible vision that he had, and it looked like the United States of America was completely destroyed. Then all of a sudden, she stood back up, and she was strong. And maybe in the very beginning, the first president of the United States, God gave him a picture of the end time, which said that it will look like the United States of America will completely fall, but she'll rise back up. Maybe this country will have retained some independence. In fact, it's similar to, remember when we talked about the League of Nations? The League of Nations was a predecessor of the United Nations. It was the United States of America's idea. In fact, the President of the United States of America, it was his idea to form this predecessor of the United Nations. And then the people, they didn't want it. They didn't want to be a part of it. I wish we never became a part of the United Nations. I think we ought to kick them off into the water. Kick them right off into the ocean. We pay almost all the money to support them. But anyway, I just bring this up. This is what, when we talk about Europe, we talk about that beast. This is why I threw them in the Mediterranean Sea here. You see, it's still here. It's just called by a different name. This should not seem strange. When Rome took over, the Roman kingdom took over the Grecian kingdom and they became Rome, they didn't even have their own gods. They took all the Greek gods and they renamed them to Roman names. And so it was the same system. So why should it be strange that we have the same beast here? It's not called Rome anymore, it's called Europe. Why is that strange? Actually, they named it after Europa, which is mythological. It was that the woman that was escaping at the putting her arms around the bull. But so anyway, so I see. You see that the beast is still represented by this. It's almost like this beast doesn't really appear to be a beast. It's almost like he's in hibernation. But he's still there. Is what I want you to know. When a bear goes into hibernation, you don't see him. You don't see him. He goes to sleep. You don't see him for a long time, and then he comes out of the hibernation, right? So I think that's a good illustration. The beast is there, but you don't see him. He's in hibernation. But what I want to show you was, you see up here, and you can't make it out so much, but there's members of the European Union. And then there's candidate members. And there's a couple candidate members here. One is Turkey. And then up here, Iceland. And there's probably some other ones also. But they're not really members. They're candidates. They've requested to become members. Well, here's the thing. Turkey has long wanted to become a part of the European Union.
Turkey's integration with the EU has been a complicated story. Is it likely to ever join the Union? Euronews talks to German Liberal MEP Alexander Graf Lambsdorff.
In law, Turkey still is a candidate. In fact, it is not. Nobody believes in Brussels, or in Ankara for that matter, that Turkey will eventually join the European Union, and that is why we say it is better to make a new start and put the relationship on a new foundation.
Is Europe being honest with Turkey about its prospects of joining the European Union?
nobody in Europe, at least very few people, let's put it that way, had the real intention, the honest commitment to Turkish accession. France has always had large majorities against Turkish accession. In Germany, 80% of the people are opposed. Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Austria, much the same. There is no democratic support for Turkish accession. And so we, as Europeans, have also been dishonest with our Turkish friends by telling them they can join eventually, but at the end of the day, everybody knew that there was no majority in sight for something like that.
The European Parliament recently voted to freeze accession talks with Turkey, while member states are accused of remaining silent.
Unfortunately, the member states are too timid, too fearful, but in the long run they are not rational in saying that, well, we should keep things as they are. The world around us is changing rapidly. It is time for the member states to change their position as well.
But does Turkey, which has been criticised over its human rights record, still want to join the EU?
We should all realize that Turkey has imprisoned more journalists than either China or Iran. And that tells us a lot about the state of the freedom of speech in that country. The arrests of people who are said to be related to the coup attempt, 47,000 over the past few months. All of this is not, compatible with our standards for the rule of law. So, in fact, Turkey has already given up on looking towards Europe for its standards, its values, and its policy.
And of course, you had World War I. It began 28th of July, 1914. It lasted until November 11th, 1918. To me, that is so significant because this shook the whole world. This shook the United States. This just shook us up. And do you know how much prophecy has gone out since this time? When this happened, when World War I happened, people began to pay attention and talk about the end times. Many people came to the Lord because of it. And Israel was freed because of it. We talked about this also. Remember, it all revolved. Remember, it's Rome. Rome. It continues to exist. It rose up. It was there in the days of Jesus. It became the Holy Roman Empire. It started there. You can see the First Reich. But then we talked about, then there was the Second Reich. Remember we talked about that? And then there was the Third Reich, which is Hitler. And there's going to be one more Reich to come, because we don't know who it's going to be. But it's going to be the final European empire.
Mr. Speaker, the King commands this Honourable House to attend His Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, it is mindful of the legacy of service and devotion to this country set by my beloved mother, the late Queen, that I deliver this, the first King's speech in over 70 years.